There, sorry, I was muted. Welcome everyone. Thank you to all the students that are participating today and the speakers. We are doing this. This is our second year of our Build Your Career Forum. It's our first time doing it virtual due to COVID. You know, we had to be creative and come up with this flashy way to do things, and it seems to be working well. So we're very excited about that. My job in all of this is I'm the director for the Quad City Builders and Remodelers Association. And for any students that are live on this or watching this as a video, I just want to let you know that you can always reach out to me. I will put my information in the chat that we'll go over here in a minute on how to do that. But if you have been on any sessions, this one currently or any before, and you are interested into reaching out to any of these industry professionals, you can get a hold of me. I'll connect you with them, and they can get you more information. Some of them said they are hiring for part-time or summer jobs. If you have any questions about education or things like that, I can connect you to those people too. That's what I'm here for. So also, if you are on here and you are not showing your face, we'd love to see it. If you could turn your cameras on, that would be awesome. And I believe Tishly, or I don't know, oh, there she is. Tishly is our moderator today, so she'll be going through the hour, just kind of leading everything. And if you have any questions, make sure to put those in the chat, and then we'll get those answered for you. So welcome.
Thanks, Julie. So hello, everybody. Like Julie mentioned, my name is Tishly Herrington, and I am a part of Eastern Iowa Community Colleges. So my role in all of this, as Julie mentioned, is I'm going to be the moderator. I'm going to watch the chat. So if you have any questions that are coming up as we're talking, please put them in there, and I will be sure that they get asked. Our plan is to, at the end of this, have a few minutes at least where you can unmute yourself and ask questions if you want to, but don't wait till then if a question comes up. So type it in the chat if a question comes up so that you don't forget it, and we make sure to get it asked. So as Julie said, we love to see your smiling faces. So thank you if you turn on your video, we appreciate that. Otherwise, I'm gonna get out of the way and turn this over to Caitlin from Elite Electric.
All right, I hope everybody can hear me. As she said, I'm Caitlin. I work for Elite Electric. I've worked there for the last 7 years. I'm one of the main electricians that they have doing residential work. So I'll go into houses and wire, as well as do all of the finished work like putting in devices and all of the light fixtures and stuff like that, making sure that you have a home that's working. I did about 4 years of schooling, which included me going to school once a week for pretty much the entire year for about 6 hours a night after working during the day. And the program included having to do OSHA training and on-the-job training with a licensed journeyman, kind of watching everything that I was doing. So it's not easy work. So anybody that thinks it's really easy and it's just going to be something that you can go mindlessly do, there's a lot of having to worry about putting too much on circuits and stuff like that to make sure you don't burn down somebody's house, because that is a possibility, unfortunately. But really it's a labor job, so you're going to do a lot of tough labor type stuff. You will be working out in the elements, whether it's rain, snow, extremely hot or extremely cold. It's just one of those things where you kind of have to not be too worried about the conditions that you're working in. And on the OSHA side, you have to make sure you know the things that are and aren't okay to be doing to make sure that you're doing your job as safely as possible. And that's pretty much what it is being an electrician, I guess.
So are we gonna watch the video now, or are we gonna do that later? We're gonna do the video? Okay, so we're gonna do a video, and then we're gonna go through some of the questions that were submitted, and we'll have that back and forth then after that. So right now we'll watch this video.
Every building has an electrical power, communications, lighting, or control system that electricians and helpers installed when the building was constructed and maintained afterwards. For new construction, electricians read diagrams that show the planned location of circuits, outlets, and other equipment to guide their work. They use hand and power tools to run wiring through walls and protect it. They also test equipment and materials to find problems and ensure components work properly. Maintenance means first finding the problem, then accessing it for repairs. Electricians must carefully follow building regulations to ensure safety, especially when directing or training other workers. Electrician helpers carry materials and tools, cut and bend wire and conduit, use tools to repair and maintain wiring, and clean work areas and equipment. These workers keep full-time hours, sometimes evenings and weekends, working indoors and outdoors in homes, businesses, and construction sites. Most work for electrical and other wiring contractors. Work can require long periods of standing and kneeling, sometimes in cramped spaces. Most electricians learn their trade in a 4- or 5-year apprenticeship program that combines technical training and paid on-the-job training. Most states require a license. Electrician helpers usually need a high school diploma or equivalent and are trained on the job. Electricians and electrician helpers literally help the United States keep the lights on.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Caitlin, I have a lot of questions, so here they come.
Yeah.
So the video talked a little bit about what a day in the life might be, so to speak, but can you tell us a little bit more of really what your day-to-day responsibilities, what your day-to-day is like, and maybe talk about the hours? You know, are they 8 to 4? Are they, you know, are you on call? Those kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about that if you would.
Okay, well, for the company that I work for, I get to work at about 7 in the morning, kind of make sure I have all the material I need, and then I'll be sent to a specific job. It could be pretty much anything, whether it's a remodel job just to put up light fixtures, or if I'm going to wire a house. It really depends on what we have going on in the company. And I'm there until 4 o'clock every day, or around 4 o'clock. It really just depends on whether I decide to take the lunch break or not. But for the most part, it's going into a lot of new construction for me, and pretty much doing everything from wiring the house all the way through to finish work and having somebody come through and actually inspect the house so somebody can actually live in it.
So you mentioned that you're a residential electrician, correct?
Yes.
So can you tell us the difference, or what might be the difference between commercial and residential?
Usually the applications that you're using are a little bit different, like the way that you wire things. Some of the codes that you have to follow are going to be different depending on whether it's residential or it's like a commercial or industrial setting.
Awesome. So what about, you said that you went to school for about 6 years. So did you go through an apprenticeship program, or did you take your time going through school? Tell us a little bit more detail about that, if you would.
Yeah, so before I actually started working with my company, I'd taken some random online, like electrical type classes, just to kind of see if it was something that I liked. They have a program that they're a part of called ABC of Iowa. And what they do is my actual company signs me up for classes, and I go through about 4 years of on-the-job and apprenticeship training, which involves me having a journeyman that kind of teaches me stuff on the job and make sure that I understand kind of why things are used in, and having to pass a strict kind of forum that they have planned out for everybody in the state of Iowa.
Your connection, at least for me, is a little wobbly. I'm catching what you're saying, but it's in slow motion some of the times. So if you say something and I I apologize. And maybe it's just me and I'm the only one that's experiencing it. So I hope so. I hope I'm the only one. So you mentioned that it's not necessarily easy. And you mentioned that there's a lot of rules and stuff like that, but what else makes it not easy? What else about it makes it not so easy?
Just the fact that it's a hard labor job. I mean, you're coming in and having to lift things that are 50 pounds or more on a daily basis. Doing a lot of physical labor type things. That involve like moving or staying in certain positions, working at a panel. I'm going to be standing up to pull wire and stuff like that, or walking around in, say, a retail shop or something like that.
So I should have asked this before when you were talking about your education piece, but as you went through the education and you were working with the journeyman and those kinds of things, were you getting paid or were you just doing this as a learning experience?
I was paid during all of my hours that I was at work. So my working hours, 40 hours a week, that was stuff that I was being paid for. The actual schooling itself is done in your own time, but it's only a few hours a week. So that's not too bad. And my company actually paid for half of my schooling. I know it's different at every company, but for me, at least half of my schooling was paid for through our company.
That's awesome. Very helpful indeed, I'm sure. And so as you talk about going through your day, you have said, you make it sound like it's just you. So do you work in a team, or a lot of times when you go on the, that's not a bad thing. I didn't mean that in a bad way. But so do you work as a team, or a lot of times are you the only one there doing the electrical part of it at the homes and the residential pieces?
For me, I'm personally a crew that's just me by myself. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody come help me, just depending on what the job is, or I might go help another crew somewhere. But most of the other crews are 2 more people, and it's a journeyman and whoever their apprentice is at the time. I just currently don't have an apprentice because as of lately, I've been doing a lot of service calls, which only involves needing one person to go to them.
We missed a lot of that at the end because you were cutting out pretty bad.
A lot of it? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. It's kind of going in and out. It's really great, and then it's really not. And then it comes back, but we're missing some of what you're saying. So if you answer and I ask again, I apologize, but it's because we didn't hear part of it. So, so since you're on your own and you have to go in, and you talked about the fact that it's really important that you get it right, that there's certain rules that you have to follow and those kinds of things. So is it a cut and dry type of thing? It is what it is, or is it really important to have critical thinking and problem solving, those type of skills?
It really just depends on whether the application you're using is something that's in our national code book. We have to follow a lot of strict guidelines that are actually in the NEC, which is the National Electrical Code. So long as our applications within that code, we can still use critical thinking to a point, as long as we stay within the code that we're given.
Cool. So if you, so there's rules, and I would imagine that sometimes those change and stuff like that. So now that you've gone through your 6 years of education and training, do you have to do any continuing training, like continuing education, or is there a certificate that you have to keep current, or a license or anything like that?
Yeah, so once you're a journeyman, you have an option of a couple of different licenses. You can continue doing education and go from a journeyman to like a master's license, which is just knowing more of the code. But you'll every 3 years have to reapply and update your electrical license. And as well, within those 3 years, you have to get a certain amount of continued education, which is really just going and sitting, I think, for about 8 hours in total of just code update, because every 3 years the code book is going to be revised and have things added or taken away from it. So we just need to stay up to date on what's going on with the book.
So you mentioned that you, when you got ready to kind of get started in this, you took a couple of classes just to see if it was something that you liked. So then when you decided that it was something that you liked, was it hard to get into? Are there a lot of positions that are open, or was it, you know, was it difficult to find the company to get started in?
It wasn't too hard for me personally, just because I have a lot of family that works in the construction industry. And actually a family member of mine had told me that the company that I work for was looking for somebody. So that was pretty easy for me. But for the most part, it's just like any other job, just going and applying at different companies and seeing which ones need something and figuring out which one works for you.
So if you wanted to, you work for a company, but if you wanted to, could you be self-employed and be your own contractor?
I could if I really wanted to. It would involve me having to get a contractor's license and stuff like that, which I could do, and then being licensed and bonded.
What does that mean? What does licensed and bonded mean?
Make sure I have insurance and stuff like that. So license, something happens to, say I get injured.
So you're gonna hate me for this, but we're really losing you a lot. So the last thing that we heard was licensed and bonded. So if you could go back and tell us what that means.
Actually, Tishly, can I interrupt a minute and just suggest, Amy, could you log out of the Zoom and try logging back on? Sometimes that helps with that connection. And if you have your hotspot, if you can maybe add that to boost the signal a little bit, that might help.
Okay.
What about the hotspot?
If you try using your hotspot, that might be able to boost your signal a little bit. But you may want to try logging out, because everything that you just said pretty much was, I didn't catch any of that. I think that's kind of everyone.
Nothing looks out of the ordinary.
Mary, I'm going to turn off my video too. Maybe that, I don't know if it'll help, but I'm going to stop my video.
Okay. So I don't know what I'm doing.
What do you want to do? Oh, leave. Yeah, hit leave.
And while they're working on that, I wanted to just kind of mention that Caitlin had mentioned ABC as one of the ways that you can do apprenticeship. We also in the Quad Cities, because we're on the border of Iowa and Illinois, our electrical training for the apprenticeship on our side is actually in Illinois. And we have Michael Ellison from the Quad City Electrical Training Center, who is happy to talk to students and set up tours or just some meetings, either virtually or in person. So if you're wanting to do that, contact Julie, and Julie has put her contact information in the chat, or you can reach out to Mrs. Hargrave and myself, and we can give you that information.
And be sure, I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but be sure and ask questions if they come up. I mean, I'm going to keep asking them, but students, feel free to, ask away, okay? So you're looking
Okay.
good, Caitlin. See if you sound good.
Okay.
Sounds good so far. So maybe we're back in business. Thank you.
I hope so.
We heard you talk about being licensed and bonded. Can you give us a little bit more detail about what that means?
Yeah, so all that means is that I pretty much have insurance to be able to, if an accident happens, whether it's me or something gets destroyed on the job, that insurance will cover it. That's all that really is. So nothing's out of pocket for me or the customer.
Pretty important though, right?
Oh, yeah.
So one of the questions that the students submitted that I have here in front of me is, what was the hardest building or job that you've ever worked on?
Probably the hardest one that I've had so far is we had a house that was over in the Pebble Creek area that was just a massive house, and it took about a month of a couple of different crews being there wiring the whole thing. And then when we got to the finish work at the end, they had a lot of just different lighting that took like 8 hours a day almost just to put one light together.
So what I'm hearing from you is it could get pretty complicated, right?
Yeah, it can. The light had an entire kind of layout, and everything was numbered in specific ways and lettered, and you had to put it together exactly the way that the lettering and everything was, otherwise it didn't turn out right.
So that makes me think of back to that education piece. So if I were in high school and was thinking that being an electrician is what I wanted to do, are there certain classes that you would suggest, or subjects that you would suggest that I get as much of as I possibly could?
Yeah, actually, I would tell you to make sure that you're taking algebra. You do a lot of load calculations and stuff like that, and knowing algebra is just one of those things that if it comes easy to you, you're probably going to be okay being an electrician, because you use a lot of math when you're wiring houses.
Math, right?
Yes.
So important. So important. So
Oh, yes.
Probably kind of already answered this. And if I'm asking, if it feels like I'm repeating, I apologize.
No,
But
it's all right.
one of the questions that the students submitted was, is electrical for construction just putting electricity through the building, or is there more to it?
There's a little bit more to it. It's putting it through the building, but it's also, to an extent, we can do electrical for other types of things. It just really depends on the section of electrical you get into, because you can still do like automotive stuff with electrical, as well as getting into more of like an industrial setting where you can do like motors and gears and stuff like that, and timing systems. So it really just depends on the specific portion of the trade that you get into. For me, it's mostly getting electrical through the buildings and stuff like that. But I do know other electricians that are in an industrial setting that do a lot of stop-start systems and motor systems and stuff like that as well.
So that all sounds pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
if I thought that an electrician was for me, are there jobs in the area? Will I have a hard time getting a job?
Not in our area. It seems like right now, we're kind of at a point where a lot of the journeyman electricians are starting to retire. So I've noticed that there's been a lot more people coming through, seeing if we have positions open and stuff like that. And I do know like Kohler Electric has been hiring people in Tri-City recently. So right now is the time.
So I'm not asking you what you make, but give me a ballpark kind of thing. Like where might I start when I start as an electrician, and where is the high end of it?
It's really going to depend on whether your company is a union or non-union company. It's going to be a little different between them, but anywhere between about 30 and in some places upwards of 80,000 is probably where you're going to be. It's really just going to depend what portion of the trade you get into and where you're located.
Not a bad living wage.
No, not at all.
So you said whether your company is union or not. What does that mean?
The union, because you're paying into union dues, they tend to pay a little bit more. But when you average everything out based on like insurance and stuff like that, you'll pretty much at the end of the day make the same whether you're union or non-union.
So let's exploit the obvious here. I've called several electricians to my house, and never has a female showed up. So tell me what it's like to be a female in the industry.
I feel like it's a little odd just because I don't see a lot of females, but I also grew up with a family that was in construction, so I was used to being around it all the time. It might be a little bit intimidating if you're not used to stuff like that, but I've always just kind of been one of the guys anyways. So, but I don't see a lot of females. I've noticed recently, it seems like there's one or two more than like when I was in school. I was the only one that went through all of my training classes when I was in. But some of the guys that we have that are currently going through said there's about 3 females in their classes. So it's something that I feel like more women are getting into, and they should, because it's a fun job, at least I think so. But it's just odd. You're not around a lot of females unless, you know, it's like homeowner or something for the most part.
So tell me a little bit about what the benefits are like. Like, do you have benefits? What is the thing? Tell me about benefits, but then tell me the thing that you love the most about being an electrician.
Okay, for me, our company has like a 401k plan and insurance and stuff like that. Each company's going to be different for you depending on kind of what you want to do. If you're in a union company, you're going to have like union help and stuff like that when it comes to finding jobs if you're laid off or something like that. And the union does have a different type of program, I guess, for like insurance and stuff like that. And whether they have 401ks, I'm not 100% sure because it's not my company. But my personal company, they do have a 401k and a plan that you can do for like insurance and stuff like that. And for me, really, the thing I love about being an electrician is I just get to see how everything changes all the time. I'm really interested in how electricity and the things that we use with electricity change over time. And it's just fun being able to see new products and see how popular different things get.
So in response to that, and maybe you said this already, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but how long have you been, I know you went through like 6 years of training and on the job and stuff like that, but how long have you been working on your own, going into houses and doing what you needed to do?
On my own, since I became a lead electrician, it's probably been about 4 years. And before that, I had about 3 years that I spent under somebody else.
And you mentioned that some of the things that you like the most is the learning new things or seeing how things have changed. So in those, let's say 4 years, has it changed much? Has there been new things that have come on? I know you said that you have to do some continuing education type of thing to make sure you know the codes and stuff, but outside of the codes changing, have you seen a lot of change in the industry in the last several years that you've been doing it?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the stuff is now becoming like smart home stuff. So you can connect a lot of different things to your phone and do a lot of things remotely now that you couldn't do before. So that's pretty much what's changing the most. And then just light fixtures in general change over time and stuff like that.
And so I asked what the best thing was. What's the worst?
Pretty much just having to deal with weather conditions. It'll be, you know, raining out and I have to do something outside because that's the job that day, or it'll be, you know, 10 degrees outside and somebody needs outside lights put up. So pretty much the thing I like least is weather conditions. But for me, they're really not too much of a problem because temperature difference doesn't really bother me all that much. But I know for some individuals, it can be like a no-go thing if it's too cold outside or something like that.
So is this the type of career that I can start in and have, this can be my career until I'm ready to be done with a career?
Yes, it 100% can be a life career. We actually have an electrician that works for us that has been doing it for 30 plus years.
So some of the soft skills pieces of it, is it important for you to show up on time, to be there every day, those kinds of things? Is it well, answer those first and then I'll ask one.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't be on time, it's not going to work for you because for the most part, things are scheduled weeks out of time. And if somebody's expecting you to be there and they're taking time out of their work week and you can't be there on time, or you just don't bother to show up, that's not something that you can do. So you really have to make sure that you're there on time, you're there at work, because everybody else that's doing scheduling or getting jobs ready, they really rely on us being there in a timely manner and when we're supposed to be.
So this kind of sounds like you have to be somewhat of a motivated person, a self-sufficient, self-starter.
Yes. Yep, I would definitely say that being self-motivated is really important, because if you are one of those people that gets up in the morning and just decides you don't want to do something, it's not the career for you.
So since you've said a couple times that you're a part of a family that has done a lot of different jobs in construction and stuff like that, why did you choose electrician over something else?
Well, my grandfather and my dad actually used to have a construction company, and when I needed, you know, random money, because my dad wasn't just going to give me money just because I wanted it, I'd have to go to job sites and help clean stuff up. And I was always just intrigued by the work that they did. And I guess it was because I kept seeing kind of what they were doing and started to understand how it worked. It kind of just went from there. And eventually, once I did some of the classes on my own to see if it really was something that I liked, it just turned into a career for me.
So let's see, where was I going with this? I just lost my train of thought. So so you said that you work on your own for the most part. So are you, let's see, how do I want to say this? So if you wanted to be an electrician, or let's say that you are, I guess what I'm trying to say is how much contact with the owners or the place that you're going in to do, is this how much do you have to be the kind of person that can talk to the people that are owning the building that you're going in and working in, or is this basically I know what my job is, I get to go in and do it, I don't have to have that contact?
It's really gonna depend on the application. For me personally, I do a lot of service call work, which involves having to have face-to-face contact with customers, or I do a lot of the final finish work, which involves asking a lot of questions. So for me, I have to have good customer service skills as well. But when it comes to just like the wiring, or if you're going into like industrial and commercial kind of applications, most of it is going to be done by whatever contractor that you're doing the work for, and they'll do a lot of the talking with the actual customer themselves and give you almost lists of things that need to be done. So it's really just going to depend on what application you're in.
So in some of the other careers that we've discussed over the last couple of days, you have to kind of be multifaceted, right? So some careers, they also need to have a CDL, which is the license to be able to drive a bigger truck and those kinds of things. Do you have, what kind of truck do you drive? But do you have to have a CDL, or is it a truck that you don't have to have a commercial license for?
I personally, for the type of work that I do not have to have a CDL. I just drive a typical work van, kind of like the trucks that you see just going around everywhere that we can put a lot of material in and stuff like that. But some of like more the industrial and commercial type stuff, you can get to a point where you're going to need a CDL. It's really, again, it's going to depend on the application and the type of job you want to do. There's also another one where you actually have to go to flight school because they're the electricians that go out and work on like the big like electrical power lines that are going through like all the rural areas, and they actually helicopter you in to work on stuff. So depending on what application and job you're doing, it's going to depend on what types of extras you have to get licensed in, I guess.
I had no idea. That is really cool to hear. So you've mentioned materials, and you said that, you get to work about 7 so that you can make sure that you have all the materials. But what about the tools? What kind of tools do you need? And then also, is that something that typically a company provides for you, or are those things that you have to acquire and have on your own?
It's going to depend on the company you work for. For the one that I work for, we buy a lot of our own tools and stuff like that. But I know that there's certain companies like Tri-City, they'll buy your tools and stuff for you. I was just given a typical list of type of tools that I needed, and for me it was pretty easy just because I grew up in a construction family, so all the tools that my dad or somebody didn't use anymore just got kind of hand-me-down to me. But since then I've slowly been buying my own newer, better tools. So it's really going to depend on the company you work for, but you will need power tools, hand tools, just depending on what application you're using everything for, there'll be different sets of tools that you'll need.
So you also said that you basically apprenticed, if I'm saying that correctly,
Yes.
underneath a journeyman. So
Mhm.
do you have your journeyman's card? And regardless, what are the advantages? What does that mean? And what would be the advantage of getting that?
The journeyman's card, all it is it's shown that you've gone through all of the schooling and all of the extracurricular type stuff that you need to do, like on the job training, and that you understand the code book. The state of Iowa requires that you're licensed, and they prefer that you have a journeyman's or a master's electrician license. But you can, while you're in your apprenticeship, you'll be licensed as an apprentice. And until you have passed your code test, which you have to take at the end of all of your schooling and on the job training, you'll be classified as a unclassified electrician, just because you're kind of in between the two. I currently technically am in unclassified. I actually have my test in 3 weeks, so we'll see if I get my journeyman's license.
I have every confidence that you will.
I hope so. I'm pretty good at taking tests, but we'll see.
Well, it sounds like you know your stuff. So I have, like I said, I have every confidence that you're going to pass it. And then, so you mentioned that you are a one-person team. You don't necessarily have a team, and you're doing residential. So how much overlap is there between you and the carpentry, or you and the siding and windows, or the masonry, or stuff like that? Do you have to collaborate with them? Or again, and I know I've asked this before, or do you just go in, you do what you're supposed to do, and then you're able to get out?
It kind of gets scheduled by the contractors, what's going on. So we'll come in and we'll wire, and then we'll have a period where we have to wait while like drywall and painting and stuff goes on. And then we can come in again and do like our panel work and putting in the actual devices. And then we'll have to wait again for like cabinets and stuff to go in, and just more of the general stuff that makes a house look more put together to happen. And then we're almost one of the last people that come in after everything's painted and installed, so we can finish installing all of our stuff. At least on the residential side, that's the way it works out. I'm assuming it's probably the same for industrial and commercial stuff, that there's a lot of going back and forth and scheduling happening. But for the most part, it's just us waiting for contractors to say they're ready for us to come in.
So you go in several times. You go in and lay the groundwork, and then you have to wait for more pieces of the work to be done, and then you go in, finish it up, pretty it up, basically, right, at the end, and make sure everything works like it's supposed to.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay, so our friend COVID has changed everyone's life. And
Yes.
I know that you have said several times that, you know, the stuff is scheduled, and then you're able to go in and do your thing. And I know you're not a salesperson, so you don't have to have that kind of contact. But how, if at all, how has COVID affected how you've done your job?
It's just been a lot of making sure that we take like safety precautions when we're going into people's houses. We make sure we wear masks. We sanitize our tools and everything between every person's house. It's just a lot of in-between work, I guess, now, of making sure that we're not bringing, you know, potential viruses into other people's houses. We have to make sure that we're calling people the day of to make sure that they aren't showing symptoms or something like that, because we're not going to go into somebody's house if, you know, they potentially have COVID.
So you mentioned a lot of things that I wouldn't even have thought of. I mean, sanitizing your tools and stuff like that. I just wouldn't even have thought of that. But that's definitely new because of COVID. I mean, so it really has affected you.
Yeah,
So,
just little things.
But still, it definitely has affected. So, so I know that being an electrician is probably pretty specific, so to speak, but having those skills, are there other pieces that you could go in and do? Or if I wanted to, you know, like we talk about kind of stacking your skills or your knowledge, or is that something that I could do if I wanted to get into this and then maybe add to it?
Yeah, having just a general idea of how construction works is actually really important. Because with some of the applications that we do, we might have to fix framework in certain areas or just stuff like that. So having an ability to understand how other things are put together, whether it's, you know, framing work, sometimes we'll have to pull siding off and put it back on, depending on if we're adding something for somebody. So just knowing how all the other trades work kind of goes together and what needs to be where actually helps a lot when you're an electrician.
So you are at an advantage because you come from a construction family. So you probably
Yes.
had some of that knowledge just because you do. But is that knowledge that do I need to go get the training, or is that knowledge that you just kind of pick up from being around it and paying attention and those kinds of things?
It's really stuff that you're going to pick up as you're around it all the time. So if you have, you know, no experience in some of that stuff, it's not really a deal breaker. As long as you know how to read a measuring tape, that's pretty much one of the most important things to be able to start with. And you know how certain tools work and what their applications are used for. Those are probably some of the most general things that are important to know beforehand.
Very interesting. So I want to make a comment. We have about 15 minutes left. So
Okay.
I'm going to invite the students to, if they have questions, or if anybody else on the panel has questions, if they want to unmute and ask them, please do. I'll be able to see that you've unmuted, so I'll be quiet for a minute and actually let you talk. And if not, then I will keep asking, because I can keep going. But students
Okay.
Or anybody else, if you have questions, go ahead and unmute and ask them. Otherwise, one thing that I'd like to ask, you know, we always hear those things about if I knew then what I know now. What are one or two of those that I wish I knew then, you know, maybe during high school or stuff like that. I wish I knew then that I know now that maybe I would have taken a little bit more serious or done a little bit different. So I'll start with that and then I'll go on from there.
Really, if I would have known how much math I was going to use on this job, I would have probably paid more attention in my math classes. Oh, no, it's not out. No, they brought that up for everybody. So
sorry, I was using my space bar and then it quit working.
No, it's all right.
That math, boy, you just can't get around it, can you? It's super important.
It definitely is.
Super important. So one thing that I want to, they've put up, I think Lauren has put up a slide here that shows some different pieces that you can, or some different places that you can visit that will give you more information about different pieces of the business, so to speak. And then I asked in a different way kind of thing, if you had advice, if you were going to give a student who's interested in this, what you consider the most important piece of advice, what would that be?
It would probably be just to, in the summer, actually go see if any of the electrical companies here in town have like a shadowing program. There was one here in town. I can't remember what company it was anymore because it was so long ago that I even asked about it. But some companies, they'll let you come for like a few hours a day and kind of see the type of work that's going on, just to see, you know, if that's the environment you want to be in. So just see if there's different programs that allow you to actually physically see the work being done.
So that's a super good point, I think. And I would say, like, so you can't remember the company, but why not call them all, right? If go
Yep,
through
I
the
mean,
phone book, find them, call them, and see if they offer it, right?
yep, and you never know. It might be one of those things where you call a random company and they may not have a program, but they might not have a problem with you coming and just shadowing for a day. So
That I'm going to speak up for just a sec. That's something hopefully coming up. I can't tell you when with COVID, but that's something I'd like to incorporate into the home builders. And what I do is get companies that are welcoming to do that, and then give that list to the instructors at the schools in that and kind of make that connection. So that's a great point, Caitlin. That's something kind of on our radar that we'd like to, do at some point when the kids can do that after COVID ends. But yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
yeah.
And Mike Ellison, as I mentioned earlier, he has those contacts with the Union Electrical company, so he can help. I put his information in the chat, so you can contact him. They also will go into the training center, and right now, even with COVID, so long as you're masked up and doing that social distancing, they'll let you come in and take a look around. They'll talk about the program, how long it takes, what you need to get into the program, and how to apply. Sky Community College, after COVID is over, has always let us in. They have an electrical program that's more, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tishly, more on the commercial or the mechanic side of the electrical. Kirkwood has a program. And then for linemen that Caitlin had mentioned, Northwest Iowa Community College has a lineman program.
So, and again, back to the obvious here, and I don't know, I can't tell whether we're talking, I think we probably have a little bit of a mixed audience here, meaning male, female, but I would go back to, just because we're girls doesn't mean we can't do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually times where I go into houses and I'm outdoing almost all the guys that are on the crew with me. So it's really just who you are personally, whether you want to do the work or you don't want to do the work. So,
and we should probably mention too that for women, that's a non-traditional career. So there's a lot of scholarships that are out there for encouraging women into the workplace. So if you are thinking about that college route, the trade schools, those you can help pay for those with that financial aid through those scholarships.
Yep, absolutely.
Super good point, Mary. So is there anything that I've missed that I should have asked that you want to tell anybody, or just something that I've failed to ask? And students, again, if a question comes up, please put it in the chat.
I mean, there's really nothing that I can think of that we really didn't cover. I mean, I think we've pretty much got everything for the most part, for at least what I know on the job.
Sorry, my spacebar quit working again. So again, I think that some of the takeaways from this is obviously math, right? Everybody hates that word, but it's so important in everything that we do. Math, math, math. And I think that another thing is, if you want to do it, you can do it. Might take some hard work, but whatever it is, doesn't just have to be electrician. But whatever you want to do, if you go after it, you can do it. And there are opportunities everywhere.
Yes. Yep. There's definitely opportunities anywhere. And it doesn't even strictly have to just be with an electrical company. There's other companies where they just hire on people that are educated in electrical type work. So even if you don't want to just strictly be an electrician, you could still get into an electrical type job, whether it's, like I said, in automotive or in other types of like IT work. There's companies, that run all the IT wiring and stuff like that. So
good point. I think that, and I've been a part of this for the last 2 days, so I've gotten to see a little bit of a lot of things here. But I think that point that I think is important too is the being skilled in a trade really you can make a very good living being good at what you do in a trade.
Yeah, you definitely can. And the trades specifically have had a really bad lull in people wanting to get into it. So there's a lot of need right now for people in all the different trades. So it's one of those things, we're always going to need them. People are always going to need electricity and electricians, plumbers, carpenters. Just, it's something that's never going to go away. And it's one of those things, because it's always changing, you can always change with it and continue doing it.
That's a super good point, I think, that we're always going to need this. And there is so much opportunity out there to be involved in it. And you can learn more than one, right? You can get yourself the education or the skills to be multifaceted and do a lot of different things. So let's see, is there any questions in the chat? No. Again, those the links are there that you can visit. Let's see, what time is it? We have 5 minutes left. Have I missed anything, ladies? No? Okay. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate the fact that you've taken time out of your day to be here with us and these students. They learn so much more by hearing from you than any of us. So we really appreciate and value your time. And students, we are so thankful that you took the time to join us. We hope that you've learned, there's been a couple of names that I've seen each time I've been on here. So I hope that you've learned a little about a lot of things, and it gives you the opportunity to really explore what it is you're interested in and find your passion.